Hey guys, welcome to Free Coding. In this video, we're going to see about functions in Python. So before getting to how to declare a function, how to create a function, let's first of all understand why do we need a function. So you must have come across situations where you want to repeat a particular task, but not in the same place. You want to repeat, say, for example, you want to draw a star in 5 different locations and in 5 different parts of your program. In that case, you can't depend on loop because mostly whenever you think about repeating something, everyone thinks about creating or using a loop. But loop is to repeat something, but not at different places. It is to repeat something in the same place again and again. But if you want to repeat something, or if you want to perform the same task at multiple places, in that case, you will have to depend on function. So what you technically do is you create a function, you write all the codes inside the function that has to repeat in multiple places and define it once. And then whenever you want to execute that particular task, you can simply call that function. You don't have to write the code again and again. You can simply call that function to execute the task. This can be called, or the function can be called at any part in your program. So that concludes that a function has two parts. One is to define a function, which is also called as declaring a function, and other one is calling a function. So here it is. Say for example, I want to create or declare a function hello. So for that you have to use the keyword def here, which is definition, defining hello here. And whenever you create a function, next to the function name, you have to use a set of parentheses. So that is function declaration. And to call the function, you will have to just write the function name. Hello is the function name here. Just write that followed by a set of parentheses here. So with that, let's take a look at an example. So here in this cell, I have created a function called hello. And what this function is gonna do is it's gonna print hello world. Again, when I create a function, I'm actually creating a block of code that has to be executed whenever I call that function. And how do you define the block of code in Python? Is by giving a proper indentation in the beginning. And def hello, make sure you add a colon there, and whatever lines that are intended below this function definition would be considered as a block of code and also be executed whenever you call that function. So let me define this function by running it. There you go, I've defined it. And in order to execute that function, you make sure you call it. Function is nothing when you don't call it, right? You have to make sure you call it. So to call, just write the function name followed by a set of parentheses. So now the function got executed. And in this example, I have created a function, but there are a lot to it. It's not just defining and declaring. There are terms like parameters and arguments here. Parameters are nothing but if you want to give an additional information about a function, you can pass that information through a parameter here. Technically, it's a variable, but we are using it in a different place. So here, I have created a function called hi, but I'm passing a parameter called name here. So this is going to act like a variable, and whatever data I'm passing in will be stored under name. And wherever you call this name, that data will be displayed. So here, I'm printing hello along with the name. So whatever whatever data this name is gonna carry will get displayed here along with the hello here. So defining a parameter is nothing but it has 3 steps. First is you have to make sure you define it at the time of defining the function, just like here. And you have to make sure you call that you call that parameter within that function. So let me run this. And your third step is passing the data for that function, for that parameter. And that data in function, we call it as an argument. So I'm passing John here. So this John will be stored under name. So hi, and if any time you define a function with any set of parameters, you have to make sure you're passing arguments for all the parameters you're defining. So you pass it within that parenthesis. That's why you need a parenthesis whenever you define and call a function. So now if I run this, wherever I have mentioned name, John will get printed there. Say I'm going to write another print name. Let me define this and define this. So it has printed twice, hello John, and the second print statement is just the name that represents this code. And hi Mona. So it's repeating the same task but different data this time. Say again, let's go back to the star example I mentioned earlier. Say you want to draw a star. So you can give the command that is required to draw a star, and say you want to draw the star with different colors. So you can create a parameter called color and then pass inside the function, and you can pass the data at the time of calling the function. And what data will you be passing? You will be passing the color that you want for that particular location. So that's parameters and arguments. And this example in here to let you understand that you can pass as many parameters as you want, but the order matters here. So I'm creating another function called fun, and I'm passing two parameters, separating it by comma within the same parenthesis, name and age. So printing hello in the first line. In the second line, I'm making use of both the parameters. They just act like variables. So you can, add or use those parameters wherever you want within your function. So print her name is name and she is 8 years old. So let me define this. And here I'm calling the function and I'm passing two arguments this time because I have two parameters at the function definition. But the order matters. Your computer, your interpreter does not know that Mona is a name and 10 is the age, right? So in that case, you have to make sure you're following the order. So Mona gets stored under the first parameter, 10 gets stored under the second parameter. If I run this, you can see hello got printed in line 1. In the second line, her name is Mona. She is 10 years old. Now here, I have the same example, but little different here. What I have done is instead, creating, instead directly passing the data, what I have done is I've assigned two variables and then passing that using those variable names as parameters here. Let's see if that works. So fun, name, comma, age, print hello, print her name is Mona, she is 12 years old, but I'm not passing it in the function call. There you go. That would throw an error like I already told you. No matter what, if your function is defined with a parameter, you have to pass the argument for that parameter at the time of calling that function. Since I have not done that, that's what is said here. Type error, fun, missing two required positional arguments. So your arguments are missing, but still, you can use the variables name, comma, age. This should work. There you go. Even though if the parameters and age are same, it's fine. Even though if I don't use parameters here and do not pass arguments in here, it would still work since I have defined it globally. You can make use of these variables inside the function. All right. So now we're going to discuss about the scope of a variable. A scope of a variable is nothing but, it tells you or it refers to the part of the program where the variable is defined and can be accessed. So as soon as, you create a code, you create your source code, what your interpreter does is it creates two scopes. It won't create two scopes directly, but initially it would create a global scope where it stores all the global definitions, which means everything that is defined globally will be stored under global scope. And you also have something called local scope that is for local definitions. Like for example, if you're defining a variable inside a function, then when you execute that function, a local scope would get created, and then the variables that are defined within the function will get stored inside this local scope. And if your function gets returned, your local scope will be destroyed. Your local scope will not be there for all the time. So it gets destroyed when your function returns, and the data that is inside the local scope will be lost as well, right? So in that case, your local variables are restricted to be used only within the function, not outside the function. But when you have global variables, those variables are stored inside global scope, which means you can use those variables throughout your program wherever you want. So that's what we're going to see here. So we have A is 10, sorry, 10 is being assigned to A, and print A. So here, A is referred as a global variable. How do I say that a global variable is? Because it is not defined within a function. It is defined outside a function. It is defined independently. It's not within any block of code here. And print A. So it's going to print it. And I'm creating a function here, and this function is going to print A again, because this is to represent that, or this is to showcase that global variables can be accessed within the function as well. So let me define it. And if you call it, it's going to still print the variable A, which is 10 here. But let's take a look at a global variable. So I'm defining a function called fun, but within that function, what I have done is I have created a variable called A and assigned 20 to it. Not A I'm creating, I have defined A already, but initially I've stored 10 in there, but inside this function, I'm changing the value to 20 and then printing that A and calling this function again. There you go. It has printed 20 because the value has changed inside the function. Now, if I try to print A again, it would still be 10 because the function has returned here. So the value 20 has been lost. So in that case, it would go back to the globally defined one. And if nothing has been defined, so say for example, I'm using B here and printing B. So it has printed 20. And if I try to access B outside the function, that would throw an error saying name error, B is not defined, which means the B got lost because the local scope got destroyed. So that's the difference between local scope and global scope, and the difference between global variables as well as the local variables. Local variables are variables that are defined within the function, and those variables can be accessed only within the function. And global variables are variables that are defined outside the function and can be accessed at any part of your function. So with this, we are coming to an end of this video. We will see you in a different video with a different concept.